Hey, guys, what if I told you that a fountain pen could save your life? Let's not be crazy. I'm not saying that if you're being chased by a grizzly bear, you reach in your back pocket and pull out a fountain pen. Or if you hear something go bump in the night, rather than grab a big stick or a cricket bat, that you reach for your fountain pen. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that while a fountain pen might not actually be a life-saving device or something that you would pull out of a first aid kit, it can enrich your life. It can help your mind. If you're looking for a peaceful activity, if you're looking for something that has a tactile feedback, if you're like me and you want to experience something firsthand, I'm not against technology, I'm not against social media, and I'm not against electronics or digitization. We need those things. Those are absolutely beneficial to our lifestyle and in many cases, our livelihoods. But sometimes I just want to push all that back and just be me and a piece of paper and me and some ink and me and a pen, because it's something that's so, I wouldn't say primal, but very natural, very experiential. I've seen people that have a problem with their handwriting, and if they switch to a fountain pen, it actually improves their handwriting. It actually forces them to focus and form the letters and form the words. And what I've found is it makes people a better communicator. Now, some of this might be anecdotal evidence, but I just finished an EDS degree from Indiana Wesleyan University. An EDS is a graduate level degree. It's between a master's degree and a doctorate. Throughout the program, I came across a lot of research that points to the cognitive enhancement that comes when students write letters, write words, write actual, not just letters like the alphabet letters, but letters to friends, pen pals, and write papers by hand. There is a lot of neuroscience, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but our brains are very plastic. And these skills that we utilize when we're hearing something and writing something down, it may be Cal Newport that talks about the studies that were done that show that college students perform higher when they take physical pen and paper notes than if they just rattle away on their MacBooks or their iPads while they're listening to the lectures and taking notes. Again, I'm not the world's foremost expert, but I've come across a lot of research that points to the value of handwriting. And then I would push a little harder on that to say a pencil is fine, a regular ballpoint is fine, but a fountain pen actually enhances the experience further. I'm going to read you an abstract from a paper. I'll read fast. It's only about 15 lines, but I'll read the abstract and then I'll fast forward to the conclusion. This comes from the International Journal of Education and Literacy Studies. The author of this article is Doug Roshan. He's from Birmingham University in the UK, and he published this article on April 30th of 2019. Here's the abstract, and if you're not familiar with how these academic papers work, there's an abstract at the very beginning. It kind of serves as an introduction that gives the researcher a snapshot as to the contents and even a hint at the conclusion. So it tells the researcher whether or not this article is worth pursuing. Here we go. He says that this paper synthesizes some of the most recent studies that have made links between handwriting and the orthographic motor skills and strategy and quality of pupils' learning and literacy skills. A poor standard of literacy is evident in many British school leavers, meaning those that exit school, and in some cases, university graduates. The paper outlines the implication of this situation for educationalists, policymakers, and future interventionist programs. It also highlights a stark incongruity in British schooling. For instance, after primary school, there's no legal requirement in the national curriculum for teachers to teach handwriting skills. Despite that, good handwriting improves pupils' level of literacy, enhances creative skills, and develops their sense of identity. The process of abandoning the teaching of handwriting altogether has already begun in some countries. With reference to some key studies, this polemic paper puts the case that handwriting should be in the foreground, not only at primary school age, but throughout the pupil's secondary school education. Okay, so I'm sold. Let's put more handwriting into our lives. I would prefer that everyone use a fountain pen. I think it's a wonderful experience. It just feels so authentic and so real and so regal and so intentional, so intellectual. Any pen would work, I would imagine, any pencil. It's more about the cognitive exercise that takes place. But let's just say that you're like me and you'd love to do more writing with the fountain pen. What do you write? It's amazing. I was just talking to a college professor a couple of weeks ago, and he was shocked and surprised at how college students really don't even know how to take notes. And I don't know if I have an answer for that. I think that probably at some point in my life I struggled with taking notes as well, but I would just implore you, just get started. Just grab a notebook. It can be a pricey notebook, it can be an index card, or just a really inexpensive 97-cent flip memo pad from CVS. But just grab something and begin to practice the art of handwriting. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a quick little tour of some notebooks that I have. The question comes up often, okay, great, I'm sold on handwriting, I'm sold on the fountain pen idea, but what do I write and how do I do it? I'm going to show you just some things that I've done with a few of my notebooks, and I'll break it down and show you what it's like and explain why I think it's so important. Okay guys, we're just going to do a quick tour here of a handful of my notebooks that I've kind of compiled over the past several years. And most of these I've used a fountain pen. Once in a while, if I maybe forgot or ran out of ink, then I might have grabbed another gel pen. If I use a gel pen, typically I want to use a Pilot G7, I think it's called, and I really like a larger tip, so a larger ballpoint. I like the 1.0s. I'll take a 0.7 in a pinch, but I really like how, at least with a gel pen, it kind of resembles the amount of ink that flows onto the paper, and it's as close, in my opinion, to a fountain pen experience without being a fountain pen. So this is just a moleskin to get us started. It's got a lot of wear, and it's been in my backpack. It's almost full at this point. I've used it predominantly for work. It started off just kind of as a work notebook, and I was fortunate to go to University of Minnesota back in 2021 as part of an executive leadership training course that our company sent us through. And it's always just, in my mind, kind of nice to look back and just see what I was thinking on 11/8/21. I was at the Vista Leadership Academy. The instructor was Harry Nair, and he was talking about disruptive innovation. And I'll look back sometimes at old notes just for the sake of memory. It also just sort of reinvigorates sometimes new ideas, because sometimes when you're in a class or a meeting or you're taking notes because you're with your fellow employees, you write down things that you just jot it down as it comes, and then it might not make sense later on, but at other times you make little notes, like for example this here Prairie Landing question. Is the rev already recognized? Is the revenue already recognized? So at that point on 9/27/2022, I was wondering if we had already counted the sales that came in from the project called Prairie Landing. And so it's just it's fascinating. Not only does it help you to pay attention, but it also helps you to capture important things that you can deal with right then and there. And then if you have a good review process, you can always go back and just make sure that nothing is slipping through the cracks. And so that's just one little work notebook that I used at one point. This one here is another notebook. This is an Exceed. So I think Walmart doesn't make Exceed anymore. In my opinion, Exceed is kind of like a notebook brand that they made for a long time. I think it's the best fountain pen paper in the market. Now, a lot of haters out there. I love Lloydstrom too. A lot of haters are gonna, probably send me some flack about that, but the paper is solid. I think it's 100 GSM. Sometimes with the moleskin, as popular as they are and as cool as they are, as you saw just in the little green moleskin that we looked at a second ago, the paper is a little thin, and sometimes if you're using a fountain pen or even a gel pen, it can bleed through. But this is just an idea of what it's like to see ancient history. Wow, some of these go back to 1115 219. So I had a meeting with the Eli Lilly group, and just some names of some people that were there, and it looks like as I looked through this prior to hitting the record button, that this started off as a work notebook, and then for whatever reason it kind of became a sermon notebook. And what I mean by that is, we're obviously very active in our church, and I take notes every time I listen to a live sermon. And so this is back on 11/17/2019. The gentleman's name was Juan Lopez, who now is the executive pastor at Calvary Tabernacle in Indianapolis at 902 Fletcher. So if you're looking for a church, give us a holla sometime. But he preached about blind spots, and sometimes I'll just read through the notes, and you just never know outside of the moment when you're actually taking the notes and the cognitive exercise and the benefit that you get in that moment, how powerful and how valuable these notes can be later on in your life. And I'm not going to read every one of these for you, but lots of different notes there. And it started, looks like it in 2019 or 2021, and it goes all the way through. It looks like the last sermon was from Reverend Sizemore. So that's my friend Josh Sizemore on 4/17/22. Just to give you a quick little nerd moment, this color is called Horizon Blue. I think Monteverde is the manufacturer, but it's my absolute drop dead favorite color of fountain pen. You see how that just jumps off the page? I don't know if it's picking it up on the camera, but it almost makes you squint. It's so bright. And this was almost 3 years ago now that these notes were made. So, wow, that takes me down memory lane. Here's another, looks like another sermon notes. Yeah, sermons 2022 to 2024. So 2 years worth of sermon notes there. And again, this is one of those Walmart Exceeds. I wish they still made these things. Those are powerful. Wow, look how bright and wonderful that blue is. That's Horizon Blue. And you can tell sometimes I ran out or maybe inked up some other pen, and it's just so enriching and fulfilling. For me, if I'm listening to a message or a sermon or a class, I find myself more engaged with the material and with the speaker if I have a pen in my hand and an old-fashioned notebook, and I'm just writing things as they come. I'm not taking notes verbatim, but I'm just jotting down the things that they say that are important to me at the moment, and I'm trying to capture it as if it's like a bullet point or even sometimes kind of a loose outline. But I can just read, like Reverend Carson, that's our pastor, and he preached a message called Other Little Ships on October 9th, 2022, and I can just see him on the platform just preaching his sermon and trying to compel people to live for God. So wow, just so many memories that come back rushing into your mind. So this one, I think this is a moleskin. Yeah, moleskin. And these are just some random notes that I put together. I call it biblical thoughts to be shared. And the way this notebook kind of works is it's just kind of like a compendium of stuff that I've just thought about and worked on and things that I want to share with other people. It kind of works like there's a couple of concepts with notebooks. One is called zibaldone. I think it's an Italian word, and it just basically means salad, I think, if memory serves me correctly. But there's a lot of history in notebooks, and this zibaldone idea comes from an idea where the Italians in ancient history would just write everything down. They might have a recipe for lasagna in this notebook, but they also might have some poetry, or they might have someone's birthday, or they might have some deep philosophical thought that they had when they were going through their devotion or their meditation. So this one kind of works as a little bit of a zibaldone, if you will. And it's just little things. I've actually taught Bible studies to people from this particular notebook because I've just sort of wrote down things that I thought it would be important for them to know. And Jordan Peterson says that writing is thinking. And so sometimes it just helps me to sort of walk through, hey, I've been sort of living this Christian life for a lot of years, but how could I explain it to someone that maybe is hearing it now for the first time? And how could I record that and then repeat it back in that same way? And I'm not just getting lost in my own selfish thoughts just because I believe something or because I understand something. So just lots of different thoughts and ideas. And again, I'm a firm believer that we have to use all the digital tools that we have, and it's part of our livelihood, and it's just very, very important for what we do. But there's nothing like the experience of just sitting down and just writing something on paper. This little project I think I did was about the 8 attributes of God, and so just did a study and just compiled all the notes that talk about the 8 attributes of God. He's eternal all the way through absolute, and of course he is love as well. And then I wrote some notes on Job, and I don't need to take you through. This is just sort of like a reminiscent time for me to just see all these things that I've written down. Divine guidance, how do you determine what the will of God for your life is? This is all good stuff. Oh, there's a gentleman I follow. His name is Parker Sedekase. He's really big into notebooks and philosophy and theology. And he challenges his listeners to sit down and write out their worldview. And so he gives 7 different worldview prompts, and I'll rip those through for you. Is there a God? What is truth? Where did the universe come from? What's the status of human nature? What's the meaning of life? What does it mean to live a good life? And what is wrong with the world? And this video is certainly not to convince anyone of anything in particular, but I found it super helpful to sit down and just take a fountain pen, and I wrote this one with the TWSBI Eco 580, and just answer the question in a free flow of consciousness. You're not allowed to use any references. You're not allowed to pull any other books off the shelf. It's just, what do you think about the question, is there a God? And it's so satisfying to just let those thoughts flow and just to capture those thoughts. Wow, kind of wrote quite a bit about that one. And then you just follow the whole process all the way through to where the universe come from. And anyway, you don't need necessarily a class on my philosophical worldview, but what I'm trying to say is that yes, a fountain pen might not be a life-saving instrument, but it certainly might save your life because it just enriches the value of your life and your experience. I would cut off my left arm if I had notes like this from my great-great-grandparents. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So if nothing else, with all the junk that I have around this house, my girls are someday going to have to deal with all the stuff that Sonia and I have kind of compiled over the years, and we try as hard as we can to be minimalists. But of all the things that they're going to have to just throw away, I hope that they find this to be a treasure someday. So when we pastored in Canby, Indiana, one March, we decided that instead of doing a regular Wednesday night Bible study, which we enjoyed so thoroughly, we would take all the Proverbs. There are 31 Proverbs, and I asked the members of the congregation to go get a notebook and to hand copy one chapter every day for the month of March. 31 chapters, 31 days. And then on Wednesdays, we would, instead of having Bible study in the main sanctuary, we would break off into small groups and go into the fellowship area and have some snacks. And every Wednesday, we would discuss the Proverbs that we hand copied during the prior week. And we got such great feedback from that experience. And again, this is just a tool. It's just something that I think enriches people's lives. But we have people that will talk about that event and that project to this day and how fun it was and how it actually forced them to sit down and spend, because you can copy a chapter in 15 or 20 minutes. And it was just a great experience for them to see the Word of God, to handle the Word of God. And, no one's going to win any prizes for calligraphy. My handwriting is literally chicken scratch. But it was so enriching and so powerful. And it caused you to think about the words when you read it, think about the words when you wrote it, and then think about the words at least one more time when you were making sure you didn't make any sloppy mistakes. So it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then as also an extension of that, we went to on a Mediterranean cruise back in October of 2023. And while we were on the cruise, we went to the Isle of Patmos and we went to Ephesus. And one of the things that I thought it would be really cool to do is to bring this particular notebook. And while we were on the Med, I copied the first chapter of the book of Revelation, and then the next day we went to the Isle of Patmos where John was exiled, and we visited the cave where he was supposed to have lived when he was there, and they've of course built a shrine, and it's not as touristy as it could be, but it's you have to go to this place and stand in line and wait and be very quiet and be very respectful. So it's kind of become sort of a sacred place. But while we were there, I was able to hand copy just for the sake of the experience. And then of course, while we were on the Med, and as a matter of fact, this was when one of those aircraft carriers was deployed to the Mediterranean. We saw the aircraft carrier because the weekend that we began the cruise was the weekend that Hamas had attacked Israel in October of 2023. And I'll never forget, we were at breakfast one morning and we looked out and we saw the aircraft carrier that was there as a show of force, and we weren't sure if we were on the Mediterranean and World War III was about to happen. But this Navy helicopter kept buzzing around our cruise ship, and probably just to make sure that we were exactly who we claimed to be, and just one of the cruise lines. But again, it's just about the experience, and it doesn't always have to be on the Isle of Patmos. It doesn't always have to be anything extravagant. I actually copied the first, I think it was the first 6 verses, if not the whole chapter of Ephesians chapter 19. And that's when of Acts chapter 19. That's when Paul went to Ephesus and found certain disciples and had the conversion experience there with them. And I thought it would be interesting that while we were in Ephesus to also copy that record. So again, it's just an experience, but it's memories. Here we are, a couple years later, and I'm telling you about it. And I think that probably I'll remember that for a number of years. And then lastly, I have this other Lloydstrom 1917, which, by the way, hint, probably in my opinion, one of the finest notebooks in the industry. And it's just a notebook that I kind of use for special things. And of course, I'm not a Calvinist and I'm not into predestination, but I did a study in fairness to Calvinism and in fairness to TULIP, which is their acronym for total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the states. I'm an apostolic Pentecostal, and so a couple of different distinctives that would make me different from a Calvinist. We believe that God became a man, and his name is the Lord Jesus Christ, and we believe in oneness, as in Deuteronomy 6:4, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord." Mark 12:29, Jesus quotes that passage and says the same thing. We don't believe that the Father is a separate person, separate identity, separate will. We don't believe that the Son is separate person, separate identity, separate will, or that the Holy Spirit is separate person, separate identity, separate will. We believe that God created everything, and he became a man to reveal his character, his nature, and his identity. And when he did that, his name was Jesus Christ, and the sonship began and the sonship will end, but the same God is forever, and his name is revealed as Jesus Christ. He is Emmanuel, God with us, just like it says in Matthew chapter 1. Paul said, hey, without controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. God is manifest in the flesh. Not the Son of God was manifest in the flesh. We don't think that there are 2 thrones in heaven. Neither did John, by the way, when he was on Patmos. He said that he saw one throne and one sat on the throne. And so that's a little bit of an aside, but I saw that you were probably reading my Calvinism notes there. I'm not hating on anyone, but I'm not a Calvinist. But things that I find interesting and things that I've studied over the years after I've sort of vetted it and boiled it down, I'll take this special Lloydstrom and I'll just kind of record some of those notes and some of those things that are very, very important. Oh, here's that. I didn't realize that I did this, but this is the part where I wrote Acts chapter 19, 1 through 6, and then Ephesians chapter 1, 1 through 23, while we were on the Mediterranean. And this was about the time that we visited Ephesus. So again, these are just a couple of handful of notebooks, and it's just an example of how a fountain pen might not save your life, but by golly, it sure can enrich it. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this entire video. Thanks for letting me get things off my chest and kind of share one of my passions in life. If you like this kind of content, do me a big favor. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment. I love the interaction with all those that take the time to leave their comments. If you do those things, it'll help content creators like me ride the wave of the algorithm. It makes it possible for us to get in front of more people. Thank you very much. God bless y'all.